Ryan Chapman, you guys, is here with us today. Going to show us some really, really cool stuff related to Facebook marketing, SMS, and sales call funnel, really taking this digital marketing thing and putting boots on the ground and converting leads to paying customers. So here he is, you guys. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us this week on the Business Booster.
All right, well, I'm going to introduce myself just a little bit, just so that those that aren't familiar with me and my history can have some perspective or context from where I'm coming from. My name is Ryan Chapman, as Matt introduced, but I'm the author of 2 books that are just my own. How to Fix Your Funnel, which is an extremely thin book on my approach to how I look at business and Infusionsoft automation in particular. It's not an exhaustive guide like Troy from My Fusion Helpers came out with an awesome book. You may have seen if you're in the open user group that I posted a recommendation on that book. That's a great book. It's probably the best book I've seen on Infusionsoft. But then I also have another book on Would You Like to Go Big, which is that one with the little arrow you see in the background there, which is all about upsells. And my history with Infusionsoft started back in 2006. I was introduced to Infusionsoft and direct response marketing via Dan Kennedy and the GKIC world. That was like my introduction to marketing. It was, for me, that was like the missing element. If you had met me before 2006, you would have seen a semi-broken man, that had tried a lot of entrepreneurial things and failed frequently and never really had any major success in that. But after getting introduced to Infusionsoft and direct response marketing, just a few months after that, I started a training company with my brother, and we took that in 1 year. We went from zero, no business, to 1.3 million in sales, and that was largely on the back of Infusionsoft. And then around 2009, I developed a one-click upsell script for us to use because we kept on waiting for Infusionsoft to add this, and we realized, oh no, they're going to need us to do it ourselves. So I added that, and I was in a few masterminds with people like Sean Greeley with Net Profit Explosion, who's a really great guy. You should check out what he's doing. Guys from Ryan Dice's office were in this mastermind. Darcy, who is now I think still back at GKIC now, Juarez, and so there's a lot of real sharp people. Dan Bradbury was in there from the UK. So all these sharp partners and people in there, and they're like, hey, that's cool. Can we get a copy? So I gave a copy to them, and I realized, oh, maybe this is something people would be interested in. So I'll call the genesis of Fix Your Funnel in 2009, even though at that time it really wasn't a business yet. It was just selling that one-click upsell script that we developed for ourselves. In 2010, we developed Send Out Cards integration for us again because we needed to have direct mail going out for our live trainings that we're doing to get people to show up, and getting in the physical world was an important component. In 2010, we developed a SMS bridge for a company called BoomText. Tyler Garnes of Box.Marketing fame had originally developed it while he was still working at Infusionsoft, and then he had sold it to somebody else, and then it kind of expired because they had a new system. So we had to write this integration for BoomText, and BoomText was a short code. That's those 5-digit or 6-digit numbers. They're a little confusing for some people, but that was pretty powerful, and they introduced some good things to us that we could do in our marketing. But in 2011, we realized that there were a lot of limitations that wouldn't allow us to do things we wanted to do as marketers and as sales people, and so we developed our own texting service based on normal phone numbers in 2011. In 2013, we realized we really need to get a dialer so people can do outbound calls. And again, we do all this stuff for us, and it turns out other people want it as well. And in 2014, we developed some funnel bots for some things we were trying to do. Turns out other people wanted to use them. And then a weird thing happened with SyncSumo, and I ended up rewriting that. So I had a little part in SyncSumo, which is talking to Facebook, which was something I wanted to do back in 2011, but I couldn't get API access at that time. But by the time SyncSumo came out, that API access was a little bit easier from Facebook. And then this is kind of a new announcement in 2017. So just in January here, we acquired a new company called Produce Department, which is actually a Facebook marketing agency. So we're kind of excited about the work we're doing there. But that's what I'm actually be showing you is something that we developed in the last year or so that has been a really powerful method. And it's kind of, I juxtaposed it against the automated webinar. And the automated webinar flow, if you're not familiar with it, especially on Facebook, it goes something like this. It's a Facebook ad. We push them to this squeeze page with some sales copy and a web form. And on that web form, they're going to pick, they're going to give us their name, their email. We'll give them an option to give cell phone on most of the more modern automated webinar systems. And then we have them pick a date and a time. And the perception we're trying to create is that there is this fixed point in time where this information is going to be shared that you want to get. Then we really have our work cut out for us, because we've got to convince them to show up, which is why a lot of people are asking for a cell phone number these days, because they're trying to remind people to get there. And then we get them on the webinar if we do, and then we present to them and we pitch an offer. And then some people will buy immediately off of the webinar, other people will have to nurture, and then we'll push them to sales. And that's why we have all these great Infusionsoft automation systems, is so we can do that. Now, the reason that I show you this is, and this may not be what you guys are thinking about doing currently, or maybe you are doing it or not doing it. I know there's some people doing amazingly well with this whole process. But one of the things that that I frequently do is I like to question things. I may see myself maybe just a little bit as a bit of a contrarian. If everybody's going left, I'm thinking about, why don't I go right? And maybe that came from Dan Kennedy. Maybe that's just the way I was wired, but what have you. But when I see a process that everybody's using, I like to say, okay, why are they using it? And it's interesting, if you've been around this whole kind of marketing world long enough, what you'll start to notice is there's some myths that start to get propagated in the community. And I think it's worth noting, even though this is kind of a sidebar, but I think it's an important sidebar, it's worth noting how these myths get created, because when you understand how they get created, it'll help you to spot them a little bit easier, and then maybe not just fall in goose step with everybody else because everybody else is doing it. But the way these myths typically happen is they happen at these big events. So it's like T&C. In the old days, it would have been GKIC Super Conference or Info Summit. And you'd have these big events where a lot of people go together to talk about marketing. And what happens is you get somebody that's got to go up on stage. And when they get up on stage, they've got to present. Now, it's an interesting thing to understand human nature. Human nature is we want to look good. And more importantly, when you're on stage at one of these big events, you want to sell. In order to sell and look good, sometimes marketer and salespeople will slightly bend the truth. And when they slightly bend the truth, they can sometimes make something look better than it really is. But what happens for everybody that's sitting in the audience is when that's presented to them, they don't know the difference. Because maybe they haven't had the experience, they haven't already played with those kind of pieces that are being discussed, and so they buy it hook, line, and sinker frequently. And then that's where the myth is born. So I believe this whole process we're looking at with the automated webinar may have been born out of that. That means that there was probably a kernel of truth at the very beginning, but then in order to present it and make it look, I hate using this word, but everybody likes to use it in this context, sexy, right? They may have slightly bent the truth. And in bending the truth and making some arguments and some assumptions where they probably didn't fully have the data, other people took that as being gospel truth. And because of that, they assume everything about it has been vetted and tried and questioned, and this just happens to be the best thing, or it's been tested and tested and tested, and this is the best thing. But what frequently happens is we just get into a rut because we've seen other people doing it, and we assume this is the only way that things can be done. But fortunately, there's people like you and I that will question this occasionally and try other things so that we can discover something that works even better. So let's look at the assumptions that are kind of the basis for this automated webinar approach. And to a certain extent, this goes for anything where we're driving traffic, where it's not the person's idea, so to speak, that they're going to be watching this webinar from their own search and their own drive. Those motivations do make a difference in terms of effectiveness. But the assumptions are, number one, if we have a scheduled event, this is true for automated as well as our normal webinars. I mean, even today's presentation, right? And this isn't any slight to anybody doing this, but the fact of the matter is, when we schedule an event, we need to have coordination with all the people who will attend. And the reason that we're trying to schedule an event in the first place is that we want isolated attention. Because if I'm going to convey to you a message and you're doing 2 or 3 other things right now, or you're jumping around between a couple of things because we can really only do one thing at a time, you're not really fully engaged here. And if you're not fully engaged here, you're not really going to pick up on the nuances of what I'm communicating to you. And you probably won't get to the destination that you really want to get to, which in this case is learning a great strategy on how you can move people in almost any industry from unaware to faithful and loyal customer who refers and blabs about your company or the company that you're helping. So being here and being present will be really critical. But if you're doing two other things because you're pretending that you're attending a webinar in the background, you're not really getting that attention. But this is the assumption we have when we hold an automated or even a scheduled webinar, is that everybody's going to drop everything and they're going to give us isolated attention. Now, if they did that, then it's an extremely powerful thing, but that doesn't always happen. And that's one of the bad assumptions that we have going right off the bat, is that because it's scheduled, somehow that means isolated attention. And this makes a whole lot of assumptions about how people prioritize information and activities. And while we'd like to think that we all run strictly and very well by a watch, that's not actually the case. What actually drives our attention, and isolated attention at that, is desire. And so it's not time, it's desire. And the problem with desire is desire wanes and ebbs. For the most successful people, it can maybe stay at a higher level for a longer period of time. But for most people, it actually comes up and goes down. And it's kind of this rhythm or wave. Now, the second assumption that people make with webinars and these automated webinars in particular is that it is going to give you enough time to make a case, which will equal sales. So if people understand properly what it is I'm bringing to the marketplace, then I'm going to get sales. And this isn't always the case, because sometimes our case sucks, right? It's not that there isn't a good case that exists out there, just the way we're making it may not be great. So that's the other assumption that we're running under, is that if I can isolate their time long enough to make my case, that I will get sales. And there's a whole host of factors that can disrupt this, from anything from we're hitting on the wrong hot points to we're not actually presenting our case the way that we think we are, and it's not as clear, or there's actually no motivation behind the action we're trying to ask people to take inside of them at all, and we can't even create that. So those are some assumptions that we're making. The next is that the nurture sequence equals consumption. And I think we all fall for this from time to time. I know I do, where I think, okay, I built out this sequence. That means people are going to see it. But the reality is, and we can go look at our email statistics, that most people are not consuming our nurture sequences. In fact, it's a very small percentage, and then it's a very small percentage of those that actually consume in some fashion, right? Because our only metric for consumption, besides action, is actually what we call email views, which is ridiculous because of the way all these systems work. That number gets convoluted so quickly. But there is no consumption until we can tell until there's actually action. And if we look at our action off of emails, while it's good enough for us to produce results, it's very abysmal, which means we can't really equate a nurture sequence with consumption at all. But this is one of our assumptions we make when we do these automated webinar sequences. And then finally, the webinar is the only and best way. Now, these assumptions are assumptions that we all have to some extent, and they're kind of baked in, right? And the reason that we say only and best way is because that's all that we know. If it comes out that 5 years from now, we're not all sitting in front of computers and we have these mobile computers that we carry around with us everywhere, we would be surprised at anybody that would say that there's anything other than the desktop or the laptop to transmit a message. But now that we're in that future, it's obvious that there is a totally different way, and it might even be better in some ways. So those are the assumptions. I covered the marketing myth one a little bit early. But let's look at some of these hurdles. The first hurdle of the automated webinar is actually the load time of the squeeze page. Most people don't think about this, but a good friend of mine who's also an ICP, Craig Jacobson, he does some very large launches, and he's meticulous about all the numbers. One of the things he revealed to me is that he could have a doubling of his conversion in his launches if the load time was 2 seconds or under for the squeeze page. Now think about that. Just having it, so the difference between 2 seconds and 3 to 4 seconds was 50% conversion in sales. This is something that most people aren't aware of, so they don't pay attention to it. But that load time on the squeeze page is a huge deal. And if you look at your own personal experience, one of the things you'll notice is that if you've ever clicked on an ad and that page took a little too long to load, you've bailed. Now, it may not be every time, but you definitely have done it at least once, and probably more frequently than that. So load time is the first hurdle that we have in this automated webinar process. The next one is sales copy. Now, this is not something that most marketers, or especially not copywriters, think about. But when we looked at a Facebook ad in our newsfeed, if we took the time to engage with it at all, meaning we didn't just scroll past it trying to get to something else we thought was interesting, if we took the time to engage it with it at all, it meant that we had to read something, then we had to process it, we had to evaluate it, and then we had to make a decision. If that decision was to click, at that point, with the typical automated webinar flow, we're getting to yet another decision point, which is sales copy. If the page loaded quick enough that we didn't bail, now we have to read, consume, and make a decision again at the sales copy on the squeeze page. Now, a lot of people don't think about this as being another decision because they just say that's the way things are. But this is actually another decision point, and this is where we have, interestingly enough, if someone clicked on the ad and then they hit a sales copy page and they bail, we're looking at that and going, okay, well, yeah, 20% is awesome. No, 20% is terrible, because why didn't we get the whole 100% that was interested enough to click on the ad to go ahead and take the next step and get through the sales copy and fill out the web form? But the web form itself creates another problem, because if you guys are familiar at all with Facebook traffic in general, like 90 to 95% of it is mobile. If you go look at your ad statistics, if you guys are already running Facebook ads, go look at your traffic. You can see, depending on the placement, right? If you said, I only want to be on desktop, then obviously it's going to be 100% desktop. But if you said, hey, go ahead and put me in the best place you can to Facebook, you're going to see that about 90 to 95% of your traffic is on mobile. And who here loves to fill out forms on their smartphone? I don't know about you, but I got these huge thumbs. Maybe because I'm 6'7", but it's really a pain to type. And for most people, typing on a phone is still a pain, even with these customized keyboards, which are frequently not used the right way. But nevertheless, that's another hurdle that we have in this process. Next, even if we're doing an automated webinar, rarely is that automated webinar available the moment they fill out the form. Usually there's some delay, anywhere from like 15 minutes to 2 hours. Now think about your experience. How many automated webinars, and you know what they are because you're a marketer and you're a smart person, you know what the technology looks like. How many of those webinars have you registered and then never showed up for? What's your percentage, if you had to guess? Think about that. So here you are, you're very interested, you went through the hurdles of load time, you went through the hurdles of digesting sales copy, or maybe you skipped past it because you didn't really care, you just got enough of it, and you went to the form. You went through the hurdle of typing on the mobile phone, and then you went ahead and picked the schedule, and now you have to wait 15 minutes to 2 hours or 3 hours or maybe even the next day. What's the likelihood that you're going to remember the feeling that you had when you saw the Facebook ad in 15 minutes? And be honest, for most of us, it's just not there, even in 15 minutes. So think about that delay and what we're doing there. So we're having to convince somebody to show up. We have to deal with life, which is busy, and you got tons of stuff going on, and this assumption isn't taken into consideration as well. Then we have to get focused attention. How many of you, hopefully you're not doing it now because we talked about it, but how many of you have been on a webinar while you were doing other work and you thought that you were attending the webinar? In your mind, you're telling yourself, convincing yourself, no, I'm here, I'm present, I'm attending the webinar, but I'm working. How many of you guys have been to a live event, like a training where you paid maybe hundreds or thousands of dollars, and then you saw somebody sitting next to you playing on Facebook or working on a project in the middle of the training that they had paid hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to attend, and thought, what an idiot. This person spent all this money and time and effort. They get paid for the hotel, they paid for the jet, they paid for the taxi, they were buying their meals, and they did all this to show up and sit in a room and do what they could have done at home at the office. What an idiot. And if you didn't think that, maybe you should have, because that's stupid. But what happens when you do the same thing at home and you fool yourself into, I'm attending this webinar, but I'm trying to do 2 or 3 other things because I don't have time? See, this is the problem. Goes back to that assumption we have with webinars, is that people give focused attention. And the reality is, because we made them wait, we created other things to pile up in the place of where their attention and desire was. And people don't think about this. So you can see with the automated webinar, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm just comparing this and giving this as a contrast to the process I'm going to show you. There's a lot of hurdles or red lights or problems that we put in the way of the consumer or the customer to get to what they want. Now, you and I are familiar with it, so we'll have a higher tolerance to it. But I can tell you, when my wife runs into these processes, she gets so frustrated and she totally bails. She goes by someone who doesn't put these hurdles in front of her. Now, she's not a marketer, she's a consumer. But as a consumer, she hates these processes. And they were designed, though, to do what? To make sales. So obviously, we got some problems here. So I want to introduce you to the glass point method. And the glass point method is so special because we did as much as we could to eliminate these hurdles. And you're going to be able to use this in a ton of different ways. Now, this came about by a little partnership. This is how we kind of fell upon this and discovered it. And then we started using it in other areas, and it was awesome. So we realized, hey, this is something that you can use in a bunch of different ways. But the glass point method, what it does is we try to eliminate as many of those hurdles as we can. So we start with the Facebook ad, and the Facebook ad is going to do 80% of the heavy lifting in this case, because it's got to convince somebody to part with some information. Because once they click on the Facebook ad, they're going to go to a Facebook lead ad. Now, if you're not familiar with the Facebook lead ad, a lead ad is a web form that is embedded in Facebook's app. So this web form, all the structure and components to it, except for the little instructions that make it unique to your business, are already embedded in the Facebook app on your phone. That's true for iOS or Android. So it's actually a built-in web form in there. And the cool thing about the lead ad is it's pre-populated. So when I ask for information on a lead ad, if Facebook has that information, it's already filled in the form, meaning nobody has to type. And if they did have to type, it would be because they wanted to delete something and then change it. And that is, and what we're counting on here is human nature, which is lazy. We try and find shortcuts in everything that we do. Even if you don't think you do, you do. And so the lead ad is beautiful because if I ask for full name, I get their full name. And we all know that Facebook's taken a lot of heat by requiring that people give their real names. But I get their full name, and I get their real name. Then I get their email address. Now, the email address that's pre-populated is the one they use to sign up for Facebook. Now, this may or may not be their best email address, but there's a really good chance it's better than the email address they normally put into the automated webinar, which, if you're like me, it's a fake email address or an email address that just goes, it's actually an old email address that I had that I set up to go directly, so every email that comes in goes straight into the trash. So if you ever go in there, I'm always at 0 inbox on that email address. But that's what I use for these automated webinars because I don't want the junk email. I just want to get the webinar going, but I've missed 100% of them because they made me wait and I got too much going on. So lead ad. The lead ad is also important because we ask for the phone number. Now, this is probably one of the biggest secrets that we revealed in that report we called The Death of the Automated Webinar that we put out, which is we generated 10,000 leads over a couple of months using this glass point method. And in doing that, we asked for full name, email, phone number, and then we asked one yes/no question. And the one yes/no question was, may we text you the link to the video instantly? And they could answer yes or no. If somebody said no, I would never text them in a million years. But if they said yes, then I would text them the link immediately, okay? Now, here's what's so important about this. Of 10,000, over 10,000, like 10,221 or something like that, leads that were at the time I published that report, 99.7% of those phone numbers were mobile phone numbers and real phone numbers. We only had 33 fake phone numbers out of over 10,000 leads. And that all hinged on, so even the 20% that said no, don't text me, because we had 80% that said yes, but the 20% that said no, they all gave us a real phone number. So this should be mind-blowing too, because this falls into line with what I call marketing rule number 19, which is don't decide how you're going to lead capture until you decide how you're going to sell. See, the problem that most people have is they do whatever the myth says. So if the myth says ask for less information because the least information you ask for, the more your conversion rate will be. This is the stupidest thing you could possibly do. And I'm sorry if you've done it. I don't mean to call you stupid, but doing that thing is stupid. Because when you only collect a name or only collect the name in an email or just an email, you've limited your ability to sell to just email marketing, which, as we know, is one of the most competitive places to be selling anything. I mean, if you can imagine if you were a vendor and you went into a market, and in that market there were literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other people with booths trying to sell things, and they're all screaming at the top of their lungs, and they're all throwing out little leaflets to people as they walk by. imagine how responsive that group of people walking through that market really is. They feel totally inundated, and they would not be very responsive. And what do we have with email? The exact same thing. So when I follow the stupid myth, which is that the less information I ask for, the better my conversion rate, which, by the way, I'll tell you the secret to getting a better conversion rate, and it has nothing to do with how much information you ask. But if I follow that stupid myth, I can't really sell, can I? Because I'm only dependent on email to be able to deliver my message. Now, if I just ask for the phone number, and if I happen to be able to get the mobile phone number in particular, I've opened up the ability to have a phone call. I have opened up the ability to have the text if they give me that permission. With a phone number, I can get a mailing address. So interestingly enough, simply by asking for the phone number in addition to the name and email, and asking a question that takes the focus off of the fact that they're giving me the phone number, but gives them a reason for why I'm asking for the phone number, I get 100% almost phone numbers, legitimate phone numbers, most of them being mobile. Now think about that. So now I can sell any way that I want because I've thought about that in the lead capture process. So in the lead ad, I ask for those 4 things. I ask name, email, phone number, and may I text you the link to the video. Now this is different from saying may I text you, because I'm being very specific and keeping the focus on instantly giving you what you want, which is when a person responds to a Facebook ad, they want instantly what it is they asked for. Now at the end of the lead ad, when they submit that information, which by the way, that's all they have to do is just tap submit. So they'll say yes or no and tap submit. And the yes or no, they don't have to type out, they just choose. So this is very easy, you can do it with the finger. If you can't see me, because I'm not showing you myself over the camera, I'm using my finger to tap on my imaginary phone that's in front of my face. But once that goes through, we use a SyncSumo to be able to push that lead into Infusionsoft, and immediately a text message via our FixYourFunnel goes out with the link to the video. Now, at this point, a lot of people think, oh, okay, I can do that with anything, and that's true, but there's something very important we'll get to in just a second. We'll tell you that there's not a whole lot of options for you to do this besides FixYourFunnel. And I'm sorry about that, but that's not my fault. I just am the one that made the thing that works. But you're going to text the link to the video out, and this is really critical because for that 80%, they're going to get that. Now, for the other 20%, we're going to send them the email. So we do a decision diamond off of the yes/no answer. And if they say yes, we send them the text. If they say no, we send them the email. If they say yes, we also send them the email, because there's no harm in hedging your bets, right? If they actually end up being someone who doesn't check their phone as much as they check their email, in terms of texting versus email, fantastic. We'll send them the email. I don't think that'll be the case, but we do it as a backup anyways. So we get those links out. Now, you guys all know that if somebody clicks, or in this case, because they're on their phone, taps on a link in an email, that can be tracked. So we can be able to trigger some other things off of that. If they tap on a link in a text message through FixYourFunnel, they can also track that. So that can apply a tag back to the contact. And so when we track the clicking of those links, then we can change our sequence. So our initial sequence, when the person first comes in, has the goal of getting people to watch the video. The next sequence has the goal of getting the person to do whatever our point, or our call to action is in the video. So in this video, and by the way, with the work we're doing with Frank Kern using this process, he's doing a 12-minute video. With the one that we actually developed this method on, we did a 45-minute video. So the length of the video isn't the magic. The magic is the message. And this actually goes back to the point I said I was going to give you earlier, which was, how do we get more information? How do we have higher conversions? You have a better reason for people to give you the information. The better the reason for people to give you their information, the more value that they perceive coming to them by giving you their information, the more information they'll give you. So it has nothing, conversion has nothing to do with how much information you're giving you. If you want actually people that will buy, because that's all we care about. We don't, nobody cares about how many people you have in your list. And the only person you should care about is you, and you should only be caring about how much money you're able to generate by creating value for other people. That should be the only metric that really matters at the end of the day. So we don't care about how many leads we get. What we care about is how many leads do we have to get in order for us to get the sales goals or the revenue objectives that we're trying to get to. So it really comes down to getting the best leads, not the most leads. And so we may lose some people in that conversion process, even with a great offer, because they're not willing to give information to get what we're going to give them. That means they weren't ready to be able to buy in the first place, because if their motivation wasn't high enough, because our offer, even if our offer was great, if they wouldn't give it to us, then we don't need to worry about them. But in this case, that's what you want to keep your focus, is on making a great offer and great messaging, because that's actually what makes the big difference. All the mechanics here, those are easy to replicate, easy to do. The message is where you need to focus your time. Okay, so getting back to that, we text the link to the video to them, and when they get on the video, that's where we're going to make our case and present our offer. And again, there's the assumption that just because I give my case, I make my case, that people are going to see my vision. That's another point where no matter how good your technology is and how many hurdles you eliminate, that can still be the place where you can break down. But that's the place you want to be able to focus on, not on all the hurdles that you're putting up because of the technology path you're pushing them through. So when they get that video and they watch it, what we did when we originally created the glass point method is we asked them at the end of the video, we said, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're interested, I want you to text this keyword to this phone number, which is the same phone number that we had just sent them the link to with, if they had actually done that. If they hadn't, we wanted them to text in. So that's why we asked for the text for the email people. And when they texted the keyword, we said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how interested are you in what you just heard? Now, this isn't going to be the case for every time you do this. This was really good for ours because this was a sales conversation-based sales model, meaning it was a rather large ticket item. In order for that ticket item to be, for that decision to be made, they needed to talk to somebody. But in the video, we preemptively addressed the beliefs and feelings that they needed to have in order for them to make a decision that would be, come to a close on the phone call. So we asked them on a scale of 1 to 10, how interested are you? In our case, if they were 8 and above, then we immediately gave them a link. In our case, we use Appointment Core to set an appointment, and then they would have a phone call with one of our representatives. That's where the sales conversation comes into play. Now, for those people who didn't immediately respond, we continued to be able to have a conversation with them. Now, that conversation is what we call conversation starters. So when it comes to texting in particular, and this is where like this big thing comes off, you need to be able to carry a conversation on via text message, because the live texting is where all the sales really happen, at least the profit that happens. So you guys all know that in a business, if we're doing 10 sales and that 10 sales generates a profit for us, then a portion of those sales are just going to cover the bottom line. That's getting us to break even. And then every sale over that is almost entirely profit. So in Frank's case, and I think this has been shared and it was told that it was okay, so that's why I'm going to say this, but 30% of their sales comes from these live conversations that happen after the video presentation offer. So what that means is a bulk of the profit that a company has is coming off of these live conversations that happen. So it's not just about texting out the link, but then being able to have conversation starters that are initiated through Campaign Builder. So we do a campaign. So once we've got them into the group where the point is they've tapped through to the link to the video, but now they're going to try and watch it, consume it, and then respond. We're going to want to send conversation starters that would allow them to respond in a way that would start a text messaging conversation, which we then segue into a sale. And that's either a decision to, yes, I want to go forward, or no, I don't, here's why, and then we can address concerns, or no, I'm not interested at all, which is fine. We just want one of those outcomes. And that's how we were able to take this little business and go from 0 to 40,000 in 60 days, just following this glass point method. Now, some of the assumptions that are here, and I'm looking at the clock and I'm thinking we got to hustle because I want to give you guys time for questions. But some of the assumptions we had going into this were that video is the very best leveraging media for information transmission. There's nothing that is equal to video in terms of ability for us to be able to communicate a message and to have it be highly leveraged, because it can be totally automated. Like this webinar that we're on right now, I can play this as a video later, and this video will have a huge impact on people when I'm not even doing it. So there is great value in video in terms of being a leveraged media. The message and offer you make, so the message and offer that you extend, those make or break your success. So make sure that your focus is on that. A lot of times it's easy for us as people that love technology and working with technology to get fascinated and focused on the mechanics. but the mechanics are not what move people. It's the message and the offer. So make sure that 80% of your focus and attention is on the message and the offer. The mechanics of what I just laid out for you, you guys can actually build out in 15 minutes. In fact, I just did that this week for somebody. 15 minutes, I build out all the mechanics, except for the message and the offer. So the mechanics don't take long to do. And that was from the lead ad on Facebook all the way through to the whole process. Now, what that did not include was my email messages, because those need to be a little more involved than my text messages. Because text, you only got 160 characters to work with typically, so it allows you to be very focused. So I had all the texting stuff done, I had all the mechanics laid out, and then I just needed to work on my overall message and offer, and then tweak my text to match. Facebook is the killer ad platform, and that was our assumption, and I haven't seen anything to invalidate that yet. That I don't know anything that's coming close to it currently. The ad has to do most of the heavy lifting, because we're not relying on sales copy to try and push them along again. The ad does most of the heavy lifting. And what we found is that's true, and the cost per lead is phenomenal. The other thing is you got to ask for the name, phone, email, and permission to text, because that's what gives you all the power to be able to sell later. The reason that we go for texting is because it jumps the inbox. We don't have to deal with that busy cacophony of an open air marketplace with millions of people trying to get other people's attention. Texting is still this peaceful land where we can go with people's permission and have great conversations, and we don't have to deal with all the junk in email. Asking for the text, asking to text on the video is what gets the phone number, which opens up the 3 other doors: phone call, texting, and direct mail. All normal concerns disappear when you build trust through conversation, which we're doing through the video, and then our interaction through text. And we have contact info that facilitates sales. So when I first introduced this to people, when we do some strategy sessions with our FixYourFunnel users, frequently what they'll come up is they bring up all these concerns that are all around the problems that you have with the other approaches. And the beautiful thing is from the very beginning, you have the contact information of the person, because they come through the lead ad before they even get to the video. So we're not just sending them to content and then hoping that they'll convert and then hoping we can remarket them with pixels. They're actually giving us all the information we need to facilitate sales before they even get to our content. And that way we can focus on it totally differently, because there's an instant line too between ad to lead ad to video. We're able to build up trust that you don't build when you make somebody wait 15 minutes before you give them the video. And so that's really powerful, because just because you captured the email address, but then they didn't get on the webinar, you don't have that trust. And so your emails are falling deaf. They don't come through because there's no motivation, because there's no connection. But when they get to that video quicker, then what happens is we're able to build some trust. So even if we can't close the sale, so to speak, in that video, we've built up much more trust than we have in the other scenarios. And so our emails actually can be more effective if we try and send them. So that's really important to understand. All the normal things that you're worried about in these flows that come off of Facebook are totally eliminated with this method. And then finally, live texting is like the key. It's the key play. That's the thing that you have to have, because if you don't have that, then you lose out on 30% of those sales. So now just imagine this: Frank Kern, who's like a master at getting people to want to do things, he'll only close 70% of his total sales live and in person, through that video or through that webinar, if he's doing the webinar. The other 30%, which is the bulk of the profit, happens off of sales conversations. They're initiated by an open-ended conversation starting question that goes into a texting conversation and then converts. Now, that's an important number to understand, because if you don't have this live texting element, you essentially could be leaving all of your profit on the table. And that has to come in to be able to facilitate these conversations in a way that is easy and it's non-intrusive. I guarantee you that when you open up the texting channel, you're able to do that because you have explicit permission from them, that what happens is much better than if you tried to call them, because people are always very leery of a phone call. So this is one of the great things about it. All right, so that's the last point method. I think we've got a few minutes left for questions. Matt, do I need to hand you anything, or can you take it over? I'd like to leave this slide up if we can, just so we can use it for reference for people.
Yeah, no, this is great. Yeah, we've got a few questions so far, and you know, I think mostly kind of technical questions a little bit, but so Laura was asking if you have instructions or a sample campaign available for this.
Yeah, you know what? We're in the process of creating some recipes for this, so we can totally do that for you. I can visually lay it out really quick. I mean, it's not. It's actually not too bad. But go ahead and let's answer some other questions while I pull that up.
Yeah, well, she was also asking how the video is presented, like what platform you recommend or use for presenting the video.
Yeah, we just use Wistia. You could use YouTube if you were in a financial pinch. I like Wistia just because it gives me some more information that I can use to refine the video. One of the things that's really important to understand in any marketing situation is you're never going to hit it right off the bat. And if you do, then count your lucky stars, because that's all it is. It's pure luck if you get it right off the bat. And since that's the most important part is your messaging and your offer, you want to be able to keep track of how is it performing, where are people dropping off, and then reevaluate that. The videos that we're using are recordings of keynotes, basically. You know what I mean? It's a PowerPoint presentation with voiceover. That's what we're doing for these videos. It's not a talking head. It's not a big, Hollywood production. The good news about that is that you can easily modify that and change it. So it makes it easy for you to iterate to success.
Awesome. How long do you recommend that video be? Where are you finding you're getting the most engagement and conversion?
Okay, so again, this comes back to the primary driver of behavior is desire. It's either desire to eliminate a problem or desire to fulfill a dream. That's the beautiful part is it's very simple. Now, what motivates that desire may be complex, but that's all it is. It's a desire to do something. What we want to do and that's what the glass point method does, is it eliminates any hurdles that get in the way of that desire. When the desire is there and we're speaking to it, which means we really have to understand the problem that we're solving better than they do. And even if that problem is how do I achieve something, not how do I remove something from my life, it doesn't really matter. That's still the problem. You've got to understand the problem better than they do. When you do, if you can describe it better than they can, they assume naturally that you have the ability to solve it. So you better be able to, right? But the length of the video actually is immaterial. I know this goes contrarian to what all the marketing myths say. Now, in certain situations, we do want a 1 minute, 2 minute video, but in this situation, we want the video to be as long as it needs to execute on the goal. Now, 15 minutes, 12 minutes, if that's what it takes to get the message across, then do that. So, for example, in Frank Kern's example, why he's at 12 minutes versus our 45 minutes for the one that we were doing is because he's demonstrating expertise and then banking on that expertise, making an offer that would allow them to tap into that expertise on a frequent basis. So if you can demonstrate, if your product is a demonstration, which in his case it is, he's demonstrating, I'm a whiz, I did something awesome, you should want to learn from me more. Okay, that's an easy model to follow. Anybody can do that then. If you can demonstrate expertise in 5 minutes, then 5 minutes is the length of your video plus your call to action time, right? If you have a more complex story that you're having to communicate, again, it comes down to, did you tap into the right desire with the ad? And that's why I say the ad does probably 80% of the heavy lifting. The other 20% is by the video itself and then the call to action. If we tap on the right emotion and the right desire in the ad, then the video is going to be easy for us to produce and have that be a good play. And then we just have to make sure we continue to move motivation in the right direction. But that comes down to understanding what is the problem that your audience has and how are you solving it and how can they see then that you have the capacity to solve it and more particularly solve it for them.
Awesome. And I think, I would just kind of throw in there that, doing some split testing, some A/B testing,
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, if you get it right the first time, I don't like getting things right the first time because then I don't know what doesn't work.
Well, it's like when you go into a negotiation and you give a price and they're like, sure, that sounds great. You're like, oh, crap.
You're like, was that too low? Yeah. Have you found that your videos work better with or without the dog barking in the background? Because that's
actually it humanizes you. So like I have too many schnauzers, and I don't know how they do this, but they know intuitively there must be like this connection with video and my recording and them barking, because it doesn't matter what I do, they'll be totally silent. I get on a call and then boom, they start barking. So they're really amazing.
Nice. That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, this is like really simple to set up. I mean, this is not like some crazy.
And that's the deceptive part for people. I mean, I know the common process, that people like to talk about is, the more sophisticated things are, then the better they're going to be. And we really just need to make things ultra complicated, and then they'll be amazing. And the truth is, that's not the case. I mean, it's the simpler the things are when you begin, the quicker you're going to be able to execute for the, number one. And then number two, the faster you can begin to iterate. And iteration is the key, right? So what I'm building out here, I'll explain in just a moment, but you'll just see how simple this stuff is.
Now, I can't, for some reason, I can only see your cursor. I can't see the, if you're on a campaign canvas or all I'm seeing.
Oh, okay, that's what it is. That's what it is. Okay, well, you guys will see the magic of what I've been sharing. As I was building out a quick campaign here. Because this is the format that we use for this, and I won't make it maybe as pretty as it could be, but we'll just get the utilitarian function out here for you guys so you guys can see the process, and then I can walk you through it real quickly if you guys care to have that done.
Yeah, and we're getting a couple of questions here about the SMS feature, and that is, the question was, who offers the text messaging process? Well, that is, Karen, that is FixYourFunnel. There are a few other, solutions out there that do it as well. I'm just going to kind of, represent what I've seen in the partner community. And anytime somebody asks for recommendations on an SMS service or platform, I would say resoundingly, people come back with FixYourFunnel is the best, it's the way to go, and all of that. And so I personally, as an Infusionsoft, employee, am not, giving that endorsement, because we've got other great providers as well. But the partner community is I think, clearly, voted FixYourFunnel as number one when it comes to SMS. So
yeah, there are a number of options. The big thing that a lot of them lack, and hopefully, I'm sure they'll mimic it and get it in place in time, because I'm going to keep hitting this tone because it's really important for actual execution, is the live texting. That's kind of a missing component from a lot of other systems. They try and jimmy rig it a little bit, but they need to really get it all the way, which we use native apps as well as a web-based interface in order to facilitate that. Man, old Justin's trying to get a lot of free promo there. Okay, so so as you guys see, I'm putting the tags in here. So basically, what happens is we get the lead ad. What happens with that with SyncSumo is they're going to throw that lead into Infusionsoft and then apply the tag that I choose. And this tag is then going to initiate, and we're going to be looking at the answer to that yes/no question in one of the fields wherever we save that, right? Because we're going to map that in SyncSumo so that data gets into the contact record. Then we're going to look at the yes, no, and then if it's yes, we're going to send them the video. Everything else, yes and no's, are going to get the email. Okay, so that's how our decision diamond is going to work. And then when we get into here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do text message through our campaign builder SMS, and that's going to go not only with not only is it going to be one, but I'm going to be counting on the fact that maybe they're not going to tap through that link. And so I actually will do 2 or 3 over the course of time. Like this one might be a 3-hour delay is what I'll typically do. And then between this and my third one might be a 2-day delay. Like I like to be a little playful with things. So in this one, I'll go, man, I'm actually kind of hurt you haven't watched the video yet. Right here, I'm like, hey, I just want to make sure you got that link. And this one is, here's the link you requested. So that way, I'm not counting on them behaving in a certain way in order for me to win. Now, you could go probably 10 text messages if you wanted, but I just felt like 3 is good. If they haven't clicked through by 3, then maybe they just weren't interested, and that's okay, and I'll just let them go, right? And then I'll mirror this in the email, do the same kind of thing. I won't build that out for the sake of time. Now, this right here means that they tapped the link. And I know that's a little bit different than we normally do. We normally say click the link, but we're talking about on the phone, so we're going to tap the link. And then in their email, they probably click the link. Actually, that's the wrong one. It's going to be this one right here, but you guys get the point. So this next sequence is the next goal, which this next goal is to get them to take the call to action, whatever that was. So in here, I'm going to have actually a sequence where, you know, I'll give them enough time to watch the video. So if my video is a 45-minute video, right, then I'll give them an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And then at that point, then I'll send out a text message if they haven't done whatever my thing is. So this right here is whatever my ultimate goal is, my call to action goal. So if it was to set an appointment, it's going to be the set appointment tag. If it's going to be a purchase, it's going to be whatever my purchase goal is. But that's what this is driving to call to action. So I'm going to be trying to reinforce that. Now on the texting side, now we're going to do this on the email side, and I could actually go like this and have this come over here as well. I haven't done that. But I could have it go to both the email as well, so I can be driving, you know, a different message on the email side. But what I usually keep my focus on is right up here. And so what I'm going to start doing here is I'm going to start doing what we call conversation starters. Oh, well, see, that's why we have spell check, right? Okay. Well, anyways, conversation starters, and that what we're doing is we're asking an open-ended question that is related to the content of the video that would allow them to express where they're at. Okay, so it's never, ever, ever a promotion. So even if my ultimate goal was a purchase right here, I'm not going to say go buy. Never, ever will I say go buy in a text message, because that's not the nature of that media. The nature of that media is a conversation. So yes, I can deliver the video link, I can deliver content, but never a call to action to buy. I always want to start a conversation on that and then let that lead to the purchase.
This is awesome. Kitty's asking if you have an affiliate program.
You know, that's one of our downsides. Is what we found is that it was producing more work than it was that. But what we will do for partners is if you're sending people, you just say, hey, I've sent you these people, and we'll give you credits and free accounts and stuff like that. So we don't have a full-on affiliate program, but if you're sending people to us, let us know and we hook you up. So that's kind of how we do that, because that's something that's easier for us to manage. And, you know, honestly, you guys, in any of your business decisions you're making, that's what should be at the center of it, is how well can I manage this, not what does everybody else do. But that's what we do.
Cool. Does the FixYourFunnel service work in the EU?
Okay, so we have, the challenge is that we need to have phone numbers and carriers that we can manipulate programmatically. And in order for us to be able to go into an area, we need to have back and forth texting capability. We can do outbound in like 150 countries or 200 countries, something like that. But the problem is the real value comes from being able to have that back and forth conversation. So we have that ability in Australia, the UK. I think we do support this in Germany. We have it in the United States and Canada. The turning a phone number into an address only works in the United States, from what I understand from the vendors that we use to help facilitate that. And then, you know, there's some limitations on some other functionality as you go outside the United States and Canada. So my bigger recommendation is move to the United States. It's a great place to start a business right now.
Cool.
But I'm just kidding. It's just, you'd have to check with us on each country to see if there's that kind of stuff. But, you know, I know that there's a lot of talk about immigration bans and crap like that, but I honestly think you'd be able to get into this country. I know Denmark's beautiful in winter and stuff like that, but the United States is pretty good. You guys should come over and start businesses here. Okay, I see Kathleen was asking a question about having clients all over the world. Those are some of the limitations with this method. Is you may not be able to utilize all the pieces of it when you're going international. You can text from a U.S. number or UK number, certain UK numbers, not all UK numbers, but internationally with no problem. So I would recommend if you're international, use a U.S. number. And then you have to let us know because we have to open up capability to go to these different countries normally. But you could do the outbound part at least. You won't be able to have the conversational part, which means you're going to have to try and make email pick up the slack for that conversational tone. So it's going to be important for you to have the parallel email. You're not going to be able to do the conversation starters. You're not going to be do a lot of that stuff that's really powerful. And you won't do the text and call to action in terms of like if you were doing what we were doing where we're trying to get them to say, I'm interested. But you can overcome a lot of that by doing buttons on the same page with the video, either having the buttons show from the get-go or revealing them at a certain point of progress in the video. So there's a lot of different ways to modify that. And that's what Matt and I were trying to get across at the beginning too, is that this is the way that we're using it, but you can take this basic concept and radically modify it to fit your situation and still keep it simple and powerful. The most important parts, hopefully you guys picked up on, which are getting the information on the contact as quickly as possible, giving them what they want as fast as possible, getting them to the video, and then going from there. You can definitely do conversation starters in email. So that's not a total limitation. The reason I prefer text whenever it's available is simply because it's just that much easier for you to be able to get things working.
That's great. That's great. Someone was asking about in the SyncSumo. So as far as lead ads, SyncSumo is a phenomenal tool. Justin Lofton is definitely a genius when it comes to Facebook advertising and conversion and all of that. But there are some other tools that I'll just mention that you can do these lead ad captures and integration with Infusionsoft with as well. Tools like Sync2CRM, plus this, MyFusion Helper, and then a handful of others that are kind of scattered. But those are like the main ones that are doing a lot of that Facebook custom audience syncing and lead ad capture and integration with Infusionsoft.
So there's a question that came up on the tools. So just to recap the tools I'm using, obviously Infusionsoft. I'm using SyncSumo for getting the lead from Facebook to Infusionsoft. And then I use FixYourFunnel for all the rest. In the situations where we're setting appointments, I use Appointment Core. So those are that's the tool set that I'm working with. The important Wicked reports would be great. That's cool too. The important parts to remember are that you're trying to get the message delivered as quickly as possible once you know who they are. If you get things right in terms of your messaging in your ad and in your video, then it's going to be super, super easy to let the mechanics do the rest of the work. And making variations is relatively simple once you know the pieces and what you're trying to accomplish. I'll throw out another tool. I don't think this integrates into Infusionsoft, but I'm sure that there's an Infusionsoft equivalent out there. But another one that we can use on that page where the video is Intercom. You'll notice that Infusionsoft uses that on their sales side. So if you go to Infusionsoft.com, there'll be a little thing that pops up in the bottom right corner. That's called Intercom. They don't really tie into Infusionsoft. I've been kicking around thinking about tying it in. Maybe there's somebody that's already done it. They have, great, then I don't have to do it. But even if they don't tie in, that's a great tool for those who are in international markets where maybe the texting and the phone calling isn't as facilitated or economically viable. In that case, you could try using Intercom for that part. But we want to at least deliver the video via text message so we can get the phone number. So at least we have that option. And then as other opportunities open up, then we can use those. But if we don't ask for the phone number, we can't easily get it later in those things. So I like to ask for it right up front. And again, motivation trumps how much information we're asking for every time. Well,
this is great, Ryan. I love how you're bringing not just like the tactical, like technical execution of this to us, but also, you know, a lot of the psychology and you know, the assumptions you went over, man. This is really, really great stuff. I'm like excited to go, you know, implement some of this stuff myself. I know everyone else here on the webinar is too. So yeah, thank you so much, man. And if people have questions, you know, after this, outside of this webinar, if they want to connect with you or whatever, what's the best way to connect with you?
Okay, so if you want to go quickest, you can just text or call us at 760-621-8199. If you're in a country where you can't call us or text us real easily, then I'd recommend going to the website, FixYourFunnel.com. And if you go to FixYourFunnel.com, we use Intercom there, so you can chat with us real quick, and then we can set up something more. But we're really committed to the whole Infusionsoft community. So, you know, if you are a partner and you're like, I'd like to understand this a little bit better so we can use it more, you know, we want to make time for you to talk through these processes more in depth, maybe more specifically for a customer that you have, so that you can get a feel for how you can implement this for them. Because at the end of the day, all of us that are engaged in this battle of helping small business owners be successful are probably involved in one of the more critical works that can be done in the world today. Because as small businesses succeed, the economies and the families and the communities all go up. As small businesses fail, the quality of life for people goes down, crime goes up. There's all sorts of bad things that happen when small businesses fail. So the work that you guys are engaged in as partners is way more important than maybe you even give yourself credit for, because the difference it makes into the lives of the families, the children, the people that are the actual business owners, the people who depend on those businesses for jobs and education and development, all that kind of stuff. That's all critical stuff. And if you guys are successful at what you're doing, if you're educated and armed and able to really create change for these businesses, the difference it makes around the world is phenomenal. And so I just hope you guys know how important the work is that you are engaged in, and that even if things become discouraging, or if you hit some rocky points, which is part of being in business, that you don't give up, don't feel discouraged. Know that you guys have an advocate in us over at Fix Your Funnel. So if you have needs, reach out to us. We love to serve and lift, because at the end of the day, we know we always win when we serve others. So appreciate all of you guys for being on here, taking the time to listen, ask questions, and hopefully really focus in on the core message that we were hoping to deliver to you today.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. That's a great reminder why we're all here.